The dust knew her name, and it called to her with every gust of wind. A taunting, gritty whisper that said, "This is all you'll ever be." Elara huddled in the lee of the saloon, the splintered wood digging into her back. The town of Dustwater was less a town and more a collection of regrets, and she was its newest, most desperate resident. The scent of stale beer and despair seeped from the walls. Inside, the raucous laughter of Jeb Calder and his men was a sound that scraped against her soul. He owned the land, the law, and now he believed he owned her. The $50 her late father had supposedly owed Jeb was a noose around her neck, and Jeb was eager to tighten it, with marriage as the preferred method of payment. No family. Her father, a dreamer with pockets full of nothing but air, had coughed his last in a rented room a week ago. No money. The few coins in her pocket were colder than the grave. Nowhere to run. The Arizona desert was a vast, beautiful coffin, and she was trapped at its center. The bat-wing doors of the saloon burst open, and Jeb swaggered out, his girth casting a long, consuming shadow that fell over her. His eyes, small and greedy as a pig's, found her instantly. "There you are." "My little sparrow," he slurred, his breath a foul cloud of whiskey. "Done hidin'. A man gets tired of waitin' for what's his." Elara pushed herself up, her chin trembling, but held high. "I am not yours, Jeb. The debt died with my father." "Debts don't die," he chuckled, a sound like rocks grinding. "They just get inherited. You've got two choices, girl. You walk down the aisle with me tomorrow, respectable like, or you come with me tonight and we skip the preacher." His fingers, thick and calloused, reached for her arm. A scream lodged in her throat, a trapped and terrified thing. This was it. This was the end of the line. She squeezed her eyes shut, bracing for the feel of his grip. It never came. A presence, silent and solid as a mountain, inserted itself between her and Jeb's shadow. Elara's eyes fluttered open. A man stood before her, his back to her, broad and straight. He wore a weathered duster and a black Stetson pulled low. He hadn't drawn a weapon, hadn't spoken a word. He had simply moved a tectonic shift in the street's geography. Jeb blinked, his confidence faltering for a second. "Who the hell are you?" "This is a private matter." The stranger said nothing. He just stood, his silence more imposing than any shout. "I said," Jeb snarled, puffing out his chest, "this ain't your concern. The lady owes me money." The stranger's head tilted slightly. His gaze, from under the brim of his hat, was fixed on Jeb with an unnerving intensity. "Get out of my way." "You mute bastard," Jeb spat, and made to shove past him. Faster than a rattlesnake? The stranger's hand shot out, not to strike, but to catch Jeb's wrist. His grip wasn't brutal, but it was absolute, a vice of quiet strength. Jeb's face flushed, then paled. He struggled for a moment, his boots scuffing in the dirt, but he was a child in the man's grasp. The stranger released him with a slight push that sent Jeb stumbling back a step. The message was clear, delivered without a single syllable. "Touch her, and it will be the last thing you do." Jeb's men had filtered out of the saloon, their hands hovering near their pistols. The stranger's eyes swept over them, a calm, assessing glance that promised a world of violence if they so much as twitched. The street was dead silent, the only sound the whining of the wind. "This ain't over," Jeb hissed, rubbing his wrist. He pointed a shaking finger at Elara. "You're mine. You hear me? You have nothin'. You are nothin'." He and his men retreated, a pack of wolves momentarily cowed by a lone. Silent lion, Elara stood frozen, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. The stranger turned slowly to face her. He was younger than she expected, maybe in his early 30s, with a face tanned and lined by the sun. His eyes were the color of a stormy sky, and in their depths was a profound, unsettling stillness. He looked at her not with pity, but with a quiet, unflinching recognition of her plight. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice hoarse. He gave a single, slow nod. His eyes drifted from her face to the empty, hostile street, then back to her. He made a subtle gesture with his hand, palm up. "Toward the livery stable where a single saddled horse stood waiting. He's offering me a way out." Terror and a wild, fragile hope warred within her. Who was he? A bounty hunter? A madman? Or just a man who saw a broken thing and decided for a moment to fix it? Trust was a currency she could no longer afford, but the alternative was Jeb Calder. Jeb's voice echoed in her mind. You have nothing. You are nothing. She looked into the stormy eyes of the silent man. He hadn't moved. His hand was still extended, not in demand, but in patient offering, with a sob that was half fear, half surrender. Ilara reached out and placed her trembling hand in his. His grip was warm, solid, and gentle. It was the first kind touch she had felt in a year. He didn't smile, but his eyes softened almost imperceptibly. He led her to the horse, a sturdy bay gelding, and helped her up into the saddle with an effortless strength that stole her breath. Then he swung up behind her, his body a solid wall of warmth at her back, his arms caging her in as he took the reins. He clicked his tongue, and the horse moved forward, leaving the dust of dustwater behind. Ilara didn't look back. She leaned into the stranger's solidness, her tears finally coming, silent and cleansing. She had no idea where they were going or who he was, but for the first time since her father died, she was moving and she was not alone. For 3 days they traveled. 3 days of sun-scorched mesas and cold, star-blasted nights. The silent man, whom she had started to think of as Cade in her mind, was a creature of pure efficiency. He built fires, shared his jerky and beans, and ensured she had water. He communicated with a language of looks and slight gestures, a pointed finger toward a safe path, a tilted head to indicate a resting spot, a hand held out to steady her on a rocky incline. He never wrote anything down. He never made a sound. His silence was a wall, and Ilara, starved for human connection, found herself talking to fill the void. She told him about her father, his failed inventions and big dreams. She spoke of the books she loved, the cities she'd never see. She confessed her fear, her crushing loneliness. It was like speaking to a confessional stone, but a stone that listened with its entire being, its stormy eyes taking in every word. "Why are you helping me?" she asked one evening as they sat by a small fire in a high-walled canyon. "You don't even know me." Cade looked up from the saddle he was mending. He simply looked at her, and in that look, she saw an answer. Because it is the right thing to do. It was a simplicity so pure, it felt like a truth she had forgotten. She began to see the man within the silence. The careful way he treated his horse, the respect he showed the land, the way his eyes crinkled at the corners when she said something that amused him. A dangerous, fragile feeling began to bloom in her chest, a feeling she had no right to entertain. It was gratitude, yes, but it was deepening, warming into something more. He was her savior, her mysterious knight of the desert. She was falling in love with a shadow, a man without a voice or a past. On the 4th day, they reached his homestead. It wasn't much a small, sturdy cabin nestled in a green valley, a creek chattering nearby. It was a sanctuary. "It's beautiful," she breathed, her heart swelling with a hope so sharp it was painful. Cade dismounted and helped her down. His hands lingered on her waist for a moment longer than necessary, and his gaze held hers. The air crackled between them, thick with everything unsaid. He raised a hand and gently brushed a stray strand of hair from her cheek. The touch was electric, a promise. Ilara's breath hitched. In that moment, she knew she would stay. She would build a life here with him. The past was dead. This was her beginning. He gestured for her to go inside while he tended to the horse. The cabin was Spartan but clean. A cast-iron stove, a rough-hewn table, a bed with a wool blanket, and on the table, a small, ornately carved wooden box. It was the only thing in the room that looked personal. Driven by a curiosity she couldn't contain, Ilara lifted the lid. Inside, nestled on a bed of faded velvet, was a single yellowed daguerreotype. It was a picture of a young woman with bright eyes and a wide, smiling mouth. She was beautiful, and she looked. Familiar with trembling fingers, Ilara picked it up. There was writing on the back, in a fine, elegant script. "My Lillian, my love, forever, Elias." The world tilted. Elias, her father's name. Her eyes darted back to the woman's face, and the familiarity crystallized into horrifying recognition. It was her mother, a young, vibrant version of her mother. Taken by fever when Alara was just a child, the pieces, sharp and jagged, began to click into place. The silent cowboy, his immediate, unwavering protection. This remote homestead, her father's stories of his wild younger days out west, of a love he'd lost before he met her mother. A love that wasn't lost but had been left behind. Cade wasn't just a kind stranger. The cabin door opened. Cade stood there, his frame filling the doorway. He saw the open box in her hand, the photograph clutched in her white-knuckled grip. His face, usually a mask of calm, fractured. A world of pain and history flooded his stormy eyes. Alara's voice was a broken whisper. "Lillian was my mother." Cade's jaw tightened. He gave a single, slow, agonized nod. "You knew my father," she pressed, the truth dawning with a nauseating clarity. "Elias, you knew him. You and my mother." He stepped forward, his hand reaching into his pocket. He pulled out a worn, folded piece of paper and handed it to her. It was a letter, the script matching that on the photograph. "My dearest Cade," it began. "I cannot stay. Elias is leaving for the East, and my heart goes with him. I am with child." "His child? Forgive me. Forget me." "Lillian," Alara stared at the date. 24 years ago, the air left her lungs. She looked from the letter to the photograph to the man standing before her. The man with the stormy eyes, the man who had loved her mother, the man who had lost her to Elias, the man who had saved the daughter of the woman he loved, and the man he must have hated. He hadn't saved a stranger out of chivalry. He had saved the last living piece of Lillian. A living, breathing monument to his own heartbreak. The twist of the knife was exquisite. Her beautiful, burgeoning love for him curdled into a devastating shared grief. He wasn't her future. He was a ghost from her past, a keeper of a sorrow she never knew existed. Cade took a step toward her, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. He didn't reach for her. He simply looked at her. And in that look was a lifetime of silent love for a ghost and a profound, heartbreaking pity for the daughter she had left behind. Alara sank to her knees, the photograph slipping from her fingers. She had no family, no money, and nowhere to run. And the man who had given her sanctuary had just become the source of her most profound heartbreak. He had taken her hand not to lead her to a new life, but to show her that the roots of her old one were tangled in a tragedy that had all along been silently waiting for her.